I think we're going to go ahead and start. Commissioner Young is right here close, so we'll go ahead and start, call the meeting back to order. Item number 10, Commission Policy Wildlife Contest, first reading. Commissioner and APRPC Chairman David McNinch and Game Division Administrator Brian Wakeling for possible action. The Commission will have a first reading of a draft wildlife contest policy for review and change. The Commission may advance the policy to a second reading for possible adoption at a future meeting.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think I'm going to let Brian get us started. There's really not a lot. I don't have a lot to say. I mean, it's out there. We've had a lot of comment on it. So Brian, if you don't mind getting started, and then I've got a little small comment or two before we so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner McNinch, members of the Commission. The Commission's had a number of petitions before it, bringing up questions regarding a number of things that often can be addressed through wildlife contests. And the Commission asked the committee to go ahead and try and consider a policy specifically dealing with wildlife contests. I thought it would be useful, and I tried to prepare a memo that went along with this draft policy that kind of outlined a little bit, at least for me, the concepts that go behind a broad policy and the needs and the rationale for something along those lines. The Department is guided by the policies that the Commission establishes, but oftentimes people tend to take a very narrow view of a particular activity or a particular action that they may feel is distasteful or inappropriate. And oftentimes another similar activity may not be as distasteful or may not be unacceptable. And consequently, as the agency trying to promulgate rules, trying to address regulation on behalf of the Commission, it's often very useful for the agency to have a broad policy that guides the agency, that identifies if something is considered unacceptable, why, with some explanation of what about the activity or what aspects of that activity wind up making it something that the Commission chooses to select as a policy that they oppose. Policies in and of themselves are not regulatory, but they do typically provide the agency, the CABs, and the public with the sentiment of the collective vision of the Commission. And then, as the Department is trying to develop further activities, we've got a sense of what it is that what the sense the Commission has. And so, because the Commission had provided the request to the committee to go ahead and draft this policy, the Department took the liberty to try and provide a first draft. Sometimes it can be very difficult trying to craft something in kind of trying to build something by committee often becomes very challenging. And so the first draft was presented to the committee, and they really agonized over it and had a lot of public attended, provided an awful lot of input on the draft policy. But because it is such a policy with such wide perspectives, degrees of perspectives, and different insights on it, the committee wrestled with it and ultimately decided it was probably something that was best discussed with the full Commission, because even as a subset of the Commission, the committee itself probably did not adequately encompass the scope of the concerns that the full Commission might. And so for that reason, they have forwarded this draft to the commission for the commission's consideration. And at this point, we certainly consider it a draft for the commission to consider, and what we tried to capture was the essence of the concerns that we had heard today.
Thank you, Mr. Wakeling.
Okay. Thanks, Brian, for getting us started here. So, really, I could go over all the comments from the committee. I think we might have touched on them briefly as part of an update at the last meeting. But really, what it boils down to is, I think that there was maybe a certain level of recognition that, in some cases, at least in some fashion, that maybe this direction, or maybe this the writing in this policy would apply to some of the contests that we might think of in terms of the big buck or the chucker fishing, those types of things where there's a level of it. But when it came to specifically to the coyote contests that are out there, that it didn't go far enough for some of the public, for sure, and well, for lack of a better term, it rang pretty hollow. It didn't have any. It wasn't substantial. It didn't do anything to address the concerns that some of the public had expressed. So, it really comes off as I think the intent was to establish a kind of a platform for the commission to work from, and I think that there's just a large desire that more be done. There was suggestions to split it out. Yeah, go ahead and move forward with this as a wildlife contest one, but get specific about the coyotes. Get into enforcement actions and define. And certainly, there's a lot of desire that a lot of the terminology be defined. So I think we're going to hear a lot of that today during our public comment, I suspect. And I don't know if there's any questions from the commission at this point in time, but it might be one of those things that I suspect that you're going to hear the concerns yourselves today, which was the main reason for bringing it here, is that the whole commission needs to be part of this process. So,
thank you, Commissioner McNinch. Any comments from the commission? Questions for Commissioner McNinch or Mr. Wakeling? Commissioner Drew.
Just a couple of comments. In my time as chairman, obviously we had a couple petitions come forward. I think based on some of the communications I've gotten leading up to the meeting, this clearly is not a regulation. There are people who will not be happy unless a regulation is promulgated. We've had that discussion twice. In my opinion, at the time of being chairman, I thought a policy would get us at least partway there. If I could sum the policy up in a handful of words, it would be basically, if you're taking part in a wildlife contest, think about the ramifications of your actions. And I don't care if that involves taking of wildlife, if that involves catch and release fishing, or if that involves taking photos of wildlife. All of those things can be abused. Do I think we need a policy specific to every species, coyote or otherwise? I don't. Do I think the commission should take a leadership position in saying, here are some things that you should be thinking about if you're going to participate in a contest, whether it's something that the department puts on or whether it's something that an individual puts on? I do. I think this is the place to have those sorts of discussions. I trust the process, obviously, and so I support moving forward with a policy. Policies tend to be broad things. They provide some guidance going forward. They provide everyone with a position on where we stand. Are we going to make everyone happy? No. Do we ever make everyone happy? No. So that's kind of where I stand on it at this point. But I'm willing to entertain inputs in addition to the handful of emails that I've received to this point. So.
Thank you, Commissioner Drew. And I too, I'm not going to belabor it either, but Commissioner Drew is correct, and I agree with his take on that. And I was wondering, to the commission, if there's not any further comment on this, we'll take it on out to public comment.
Well, Chairman Wallace,
Mr. Valentine.
when this policy came to me after the several meetings we've had regarding the coyote calling contest. I read through it, and personally, I like the wording, and I think it's a start. It's for us as a commission, I think it makes a statement, and I personally like this particular policy as written.
Thank you, Commissioner Valentine. Commissioner Hubbs.
I did spend some time looking over this policy as well, and some of the concerns that I saw was obviously it's broad, it's pretty vague in some areas, but it is a beginning, and that's how you start. Some of the things that have come up with some of these contests, particularly the killing contest, particularly in the non-game fur-bearing type community, the non-regulated species, it causes concern for a great deal of the public. I'm wondering if, I see that they broke it down, the policy, into things that the Commission supports, and then obviously things that the Commission does not support, and I think that's a good start. But I think if we were to even bring into it, I know we referenced the North American model. My thought was to actually bring in some of the model's tenets and describe what those are, because I think it's going to even lead the Commission in a more clear manner moving forward as to contests that may not be acceptable.
Thank you, Commissioner Hubbs. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, agree with Paul Valentine. I think there's a lot of this policy that I like with the language. It makes some statements about us ethically. My personal standing, I think more of the coyote than anything else. I grew up in an environment. My family has a long history in the state of ranching in northern Nevada, and I lost track of the times I jumped off my horse, or I saw somebody jump off a horse and kill a coyote out on the range, because that's the mentality of a cowboy or somebody that runs cows. However, I totally don't get the killing of species for fun, and especially implanting that in young people that just kill for the fun of it and having a contest to do it. I can't ever support that, and I would do anything to prevent that of any type of wildlife. I think it's a decision that a human being makes out there on the range and makes that decision individually, and I think this is a start to craft something like that where we as a commission make a stand and a statement. And I agree with Kristen. Maybe there's some ideas from the North American model we can add to it. It's almost somewhat of a personal choice thing, but these organized contests, I got no use for them. I would never support them.
Thank you, Commissioner Young. Further Commissioner comments? Hearing none, I'll take it out to the public. We'll start in Las Vegas.
Go ahead, Jenna.
Yes, Mr. Chair and Commission. For the record, I'm...
Hey, can you guys turn your speaker down a little bit or something? You're blowing us out up here.
Test that.
Test. Is that better, Mr. Chair?
A little more down, please.
We have the exact opposite that you have down there.
Mr. Chair, is that appropriate volume?
I think that'll work.
Can you just mute it on our end?
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. So it's still too loud?
No, I think that'll work for now. We'll try that out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commission, for the record, I am Jana Wright, a resident of Clark County. I want to thank you for bringing a policy forward to address wildlife contests. The Commission often grapples with tough policy issues as more and more stakeholders become involved in the management of our wildlife. Wildlife belongs to all the people of Nevada. The broad category of wildlife contests and what the Commission supports and doesn't support could perhaps be better defined. I personally interpret the policy before you today as a policy that does not support coyote killing contests. In reviewing the minutes of the APRP committee of June 2016, I see I cannot make that assumption, as at least one person during public comment felt the policy would allow coyote killing contests. It appears clarification is needed. I suggest under the section of contests the Commission does not support, add a 5th bullet point that reads, reward the taking of coyotes in contests, tournaments, or derbies. As always, I thank you for taking my comments under consideration in this policy discussion. Thank you.
Shall I go ahead?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, this is Stephanie Myers from Las Vegas. I'd like to make 2 points, if I could. The first is that we're not talking about your exterminator killing all your cockroaches. And we're also not talking about, hey, I think my Uncle John killed a bigger buck than you did. Oh, you want to bet? We're not talking about those kinds of things at all. What we are talking about is the serious gatherings that glory in the killing of one species, the coyote, that pest. And someone saying, who can kill the most coyotes for fun and profits and prizes? These kinds of the brutal contests, that's what we are asking for policy on. One with definition, as Jana suggests, and also enforcement. The second point that I'd like to make is that you gentlemen often talk about following the science. And have you seen this list of scientists who signed this letter from Project Coyote, which I know you all received? Here are 50 of our best scientists from all over this country and Canada and the world. And they point out that coyote killing contests are not effective at either depredation, serving management objectives or loss of livestock, or increasing the population of game species. They also point out that coyotes have many beneficial effects such as rodent control and disease prevention, and that these contests should be prohibited. These are some of the best scientists in the world, and we hope that you will incorporate their considered opinions into your thinking and your policy. Thank you very much for allowing me to express my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Any further public
That
comment?
closes comment, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment in Elko?
No comment in Elko.
Thank you, Elko. Public comment in Reno? And I'm just going to state for the record too, if you guys, if it's for a group or something like that, let us know so that we know for the proper
Yes,
6
I'm
minutes
Oliver
versus 3
Starr.
minutes.
I'm here representing Project Coyote. Personally, I'm also a wildlife advocate with extensive backcountry experience and more than 30 years of direct, hands-on work with large carnivores, including wolves and coyotes. So I'm going to read the letter from Project Coyote. Dear Commissioners, on behalf of Project Coyote and our Nevada supporters, we offer these comments regarding the proposed policy addressing organized contests and the take of wildlife in Nevada. The proposed policy, the Commission supports contests that focus on the ethical, personal skill necessary to the contest. Our response, modern methods with electronic calls and super sophisticated weaponry minimize personal skills. How can any wildlife killing contest be deemed ethical? The Commission must define what constitutes ethical personal skills for wildlife killing contests. The assurance of ethical personal skill seems impossible to achieve in the context of a wildlife killing contest. We note that the highly respected Boone and Crockett Club opposes wildlife killing contests as being antithetical to ethical sportsmanship. To encourage participation in wildlife-related activities and outdoor traditions. Our response, where is the evidence that wildlife killing contests are an established outdoor tradition? And even if there is such a tradition, what is the justification for perpetuating the tradition? Similar traditions, such as cockfighting and dogfighting, have been banned for being unethical. What makes wildlife killing contests different? Follow all relevant laws, regulations, and ordinances. Response. For regulated species, this is a given expectation and legal requirement. But what rules would contestants be legally compelled to follow for killing contests of unregulated species, such as coyotes? Adhere to the principles of the North American model of wildlife conservation. Our response, the North American model establishes wildlife as a public trust resource. Wildlife means all wildlife. The public means everyone and all interests, not just hunters, and all future generations. How can wildlife killing contests be reconciled with the Commission's public trust obligations? The North American model requires a legitimate purpose for killing wildlife. No legitimate purpose is served by competitive killing of wildlife. The Commission openly admits this by stating the wildlife management profession does not generally recognize the use of contests as a tool with substantial wildlife management effect. This tenet alone should justify a complete ban of wildlife killing contests. The North American model prohibits the marketing of game. How is offering cash and prizes for the dead bodies of wildlife not the establishment of a market for wildlife? The only way a killing contest could meet this standard would be one that offered no money or prizes. The North American model requires wildlife policy to be based on consistent with the best available science. There is no valid science in support of killing contests, and we have also the 50 scientists that have signed an attached letter. The Commission says that contests should encourage respect for wildlife pursued, attention to traditions, exercise, and enjoyment of wildlife resources. Our response: competitive killing of wildlife is antithetical to the concept of respect, enjoyment, and traditional uses of wildlife. We challenge the Commission to demonstrate otherwise. The Commission does not support contests that glorify the death of wildlife through insensitive photographs, inappropriate behaviors, or contests that simply enumerate take. Our response: how does the awarding of cash prizes not glorify the death of wildlife killed in a contest, even if all the photographs are not insensitive? We believe that the very act of striving to kill more wildlife than all other contestants in order to win a prize constitutes inappropriate behavior. The very nature of a contest requires winners and losers. There are few ways to establish winners without enumerating take, which is the measure of success in most, if not all, wildlife killing contests. How is the Commission's admonition of these unsavory attributes of wildlife killing contests going to stop such contests? What is the fine for contests that don't follow these rules of engagement? The Commission does not support contests that intentionally violate wildlife laws or intentionally conceal inadvertent violations of wildlife law. Our response: how can this be enforced? The Commission does not support contests that do not use all parts and edible portions of the wildlife taken. Our response: how is edible defined? Are there species of wildlife that are considered inedible? If so, these need to be specifically identified. Otherwise, how can this provision be properly enforced? And how can the killing of inedible wildlife be considered a legitimate purpose for taking wildlife? The Commission does not support contests that are blatantly disrespectful to the wildlife being pursued. Response: the prohibition serves to define the basic nature of all wildlife killing contests: blatantly disrespectful. Under what conditions would the wanton killing of wildlife for personal glory and prizes be respectful? Based on the aforementioned questions and comments regarding the Commission's proposed policy, we believe there is solid justification for the outright banning of wildlife killing contests. Because coyote killing contests are the most prevalent and controversial form of wildlife killing contest in Nevada, and because the indiscriminate killing of predators
about 30 seconds
is not a legitimate science-based wildlife management tool as outlined in a letter below signed by 50 preeminent scientists that provides peer-reviewed scientists, we urge the Commission to consider starting with a ban of coyote killing contests. And I would like to also just show you an image. This is from Google search for coyote killing rig. And I just want to present this to the Commission because I want you to see what is going on.
That's 6 minutes, Mr. Starr. Would you please wrap up?
What presents you
we received it.
We've received it. Mr. Volz.
Yes, good morning. For the record, Fred Volz. Even though the Commission has created special NAC regulations for antelope, black bear, deer, bighorn sheep, elk, and mountain goats, it has committed a serious error in judgment by reducing wildlife killing contests to a mere policy. Project Coyote, its trained biologist Camilla Fox, and 50 other scientists submitted a point-by-point analysis of the deficiencies and enormous holes in this proposed policy. There are no reasonable answers to the questions they have appropriately raised. Despite 2 public petitions to this commission and hundreds of people sending written comments and speaking out at your meetings, the issue cannot and has not been adequately addressed by the proposed policy. There is nothing in this policy that provides game warden Turnipseed and his deputies with any enforcement mechanism to cite, fine, or prosecute offenders. There is no procedure for assessing the gaming aspects of these contests, which should be created in unison with the State Gaming Commission. How is the Commission protecting the public or promoting public safety if a group of people are racing around on both public and private property, indiscriminately discharging lethal weapons? How is the Commission managing wildlife with these vague statements that have no operational or legal effect? Who is going to define what constitutes insensitive if the U.S. Supreme Court cannot define what is or is not pornography? The proposed policy statement, as currently constituted, does not create prudent public policy. It needs to be jettisoned in favor of a formal, meaningful regulation that addresses the core problem brought to the Commission's attention by the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bolt. Public comment?
My name is Susan Terry, and I have lived in Golden Valley for 43 years. When I first moved to Golden Valley, I had a huge garden. It was about 1/4 of an acre, and the rabbits really didn't bother my garden. In the last, I'd say, 5 to 8 years, I can't have a garden anymore unless I have a really, really secure fence, because there are so many rabbits. I'll get up in the morning and there'll be 7 to 10 rabbits in my front yard, which they have eaten so that my front lawn is 1/2 inch tall. I never mow my lawn. They eat my lawn. I did try and plant a garden, and I thought, well, I'll plant onions on the outside of my garden because rabbits don't like onions. They are so desperate because there's so many of them. They ate all my onions, too. They ate everything. If you would consider, in Yellowstone, they took all the wolves out of Yellowstone, and it totally changed the whole environment in Yellowstone because the wolves were part of the ecosystem. Well, the coyotes here, and especially in the North Valleys, because the last coyote contest that I know about was in Lemon Valley, right next to my valley. There's so many rabbits that in Yellowstone, the wolves were a keystone species. I think that perhaps the coyotes are a keystone species in our environment because they kill the rabbits. They've been killing all the coyotes. Now there's thousands and thousands of rabbits out there that weren't there before. And people complain because they say they're eating their pets, but they moved out to the country to get out of the city. So when you move to the country, you have to consider that this is the country. And if you have pets, then you have to protect your pets. Make sure they come in at night. Watch them. And the whole ecosystem out there is already changing. We used to have a lot of softer vegetation. Now almost all the vegetation is stickers because the rabbits don't eat the stickers, and unfortunately they don't eat the white top either because I'm inundated with white top, and they don't eat the white top. They just eat my garden. So I really think that's about all I have to say, but I really think that you could maybe consider that coyotes are a keystone species for our area, and we really need them to keep our rodent population down.
Thank you, Ms. Terry. Next public comment, Marino? Seeing.
Hi, sorry, I'm running a little late this morning. Here's my card. Connie Howard for the record, speaking for the Nevada Wildlife Alliance. I just want to say that we are very much in support of the letter that Project Coyote submitted to you. We are pleased, and I really, as one of the original petitioners, I want to thank the commission for moving a policy forward. I think it's always a good thing when our voices are heard, and I'm truly grateful. I do share Project Coyote's concerns that this policy is vague. Certainly it lacks enforcement. I know Chairman Drew said, you know, we can't please all the people, and we know there are people who would like a regulation. So I guess I am here to urge you to consider to look at it again and consider a regulation. I think you could ban coyote killing contests. I think you could make it specific, and that would be my hope. And I also definitely agree that you could add language to put it in greater alignment with the North American model. I think it's a really good start. So I would actually ask you just to kindly consider your work, furthering your work, and we are grateful for a start, but the policy as presented lacks enforcement and is just too vague. But thank you for your start.
Ms. Howard. Dr. Moldy.
Mr. Chairman, Don Moldy-Reno, Nevada Wildlife Alliance. I also to thank the Commission and the Department staff for putting this effort together. It's certainly a step ahead of where we've been prior to this time, and I do think it's important the Commission do something with it, whether it's this or something else. You know, for a start, taking a 30,000-foot view of this issue, I think the Department's policy is not a bad proposal. The only thing I would add to it is to perhaps have as part of the policy that the Commission solicits information from the public where events like this are occurring in violation of the policy, should it be adopted. But frankly, I'd like to see a smaller, concentrated version regarding the coyote killing contest, because as far as I know, that's the only killing contest that's occurring in this state that is of concern. And in my 40 years of coming to these meetings, I don't ever remember any other killing contest being a focus of concern. So I don't think there is anything else. I know of no other contest other than coyote killing contest. So it would have been nice if the Department put together a proposal that specifically focused on that issue instead of the general view, and then we could compare the two and see which one we liked. But one other thing, there's some talk in the past, and I've heard among Department staff that somehow because the coyote is an unregulated animal or an unprotected animal in this state, that you don't have any way of dealing with it. And you know, NRS, the Nevada law, 501.181 defines Commission duties, and part of that is regulation enactment. And Section 3, subsection A of 501.181 says, establish policies for areas of interest, including, and then subsection A, the management of big and small game mammals, upland and migratory game birds, fur-bearing mammals, game fish, and protected and unprotected mammals, birds, fish, reptiles, and amphibians. So clearly, the law says you can do it, just to be clear on that. Now, I still regard this issue as a wildlife hate crime, as I said in our first petition. People who do this are haters, and perhaps not everyone, but clearly that's the flavor of what I get from what I see and what I know. And it seems to me that that's certainly worth some attention from you. But I'm going to talk about something that nobody else in the audience will, because I know, and I know most of you know, why you don't want to do anything. Because the noisiest sportsmen that come to your meetings will complain that you're taking away hunter opportunity, which all of us know is what drives the system, even though you don't say so. We know, I know, you know, that's what it's all about. And we also know that it's against international law. Well, I'm joking, but you cannot remove hunter opportunity or your noisiest sportsmen, some of who are in this room, will come to you and bitch and complain that you have taken away something from them. And I think...
Dr. Moldy, I hate to interrupt here, and you guys need to get together when you come, and whichever one of you is going to speak for the Nevada Wildlife Alliance, either pick one or the other, because we've let you go almost 4 minutes, and I let Ms. Howard go representing Nevada Wildlife Alliance. So if you guys can kind of figure that out before, I'm going to let you finish, but I just want you guys to try and work on that.
I understand. And I didn't hear that she said that she was speaking for us, so I apologize for that.
No problem.
Anyway, I'm done anyway. So I think you need to show some spine and some courage and do what needs to be done.
Thank you, Dr. Mullen. Next public comment.
I'm Trish Swain from Trail Safe Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. I agree with what's been said about it appears to me that we are making some progress here. Slower than we'd like, but I see that now, whereas our first effort was not taken seriously, and whereas we were turned down the first time we approached you with so many people testifying against these contest hunts, now we've reached the point where we're having a discussion. I'm very grateful for that fact. And I think that there's nothing to be added to what was said in the Project Coyote letter. I think that covers most of the points that are relevant here. I want to say I'm very concerned about my own neighborhood. There's a little online community, and people are all up in arms because they saw 7 coyotes the other day. And everybody's very upset about this, and it's so upsetting to me. I posted the points from Project Coyote. I posted the points that are made so well on the Department of Wildlife website about coexisting with coyotes, but people are still not convinced. So I would hope, I'm very optimistic, that we will continue this process, that I totally agree with Commissioner Young, that this is, first of all, to me, the most important point is children, because I am a retired educator, and the idea that pictures of children are on the internet gloating over bleeding bodies, that is utterly unacceptable. And that, above all, makes these contests unacceptable to me. And I don't want to see it reach that point in my own neighborhood, which is Spanish Springs. What I'm hoping is one of these days the Department of Wildlife could help us, could do educational meetings and show videos and help people understand coyotes, how to coexist with them, to dispel this knee-jerk fear that arises when coyotes are simply seen in a neighborhood. So those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Swain. Next public comment, come on up.
Commissioners, my name is Brendan Abel. I'm an intern for the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, but I will only be representing myself. Pretty much everyone before me has made their own comments and pretty much touched on what I was going to say, so I just wanted to share the cultural part of the coyote to Native people. I will do that by sharing with the Commission a short oral history about the coyote from the Paiutes. And it goes, coyote, like his older brother wolf, are spiritual beings. In the beginning, wolf instructed coyote to deliver a sacred water jug of life to a particular area in the earth. Coyote was instructed not to leave the sacred water jug unattended, nor open the jug for any reason. This water jug contained all Indian people. Water is an important element of life. Human beings are made of more than 60% of water. While Coyote carried the sacred water jug of life, he could hear the sounds coming from it. Coyote became curious of the sounds and took the lid off the water jug. The people in the water jug jumped out, scattered about, and ran over the Great Basin. That is why there are different bands, tribes, and people throughout the region. As you heard, coyotes were here first and put us humans here second. So my people owe a lot of respect to him. Coyote is not a varmint. He is a respectable spiritual being. So it saddens not only Native people, but people of other races to hear about these contests which promote killing for fun. These wildlife contests convey the wrong message not only to hunters, but to children and the general public that all animal life is expendable. These coyote contests must not continue because the population of coyotes will have a rebound effect, meaning the population in one area would decrease temporarily and then rebound back and even surpass the original number. There are a number of factors to why this happens. In one instance, when the number of coyotes are reduced in a pack, there is much more food available for the remaining coyotes as well as the coyote pups. When there is more food to eat, the number of coyote pups that usually die will survive. The attacks on livestock occurs when a mother coyote has a lot more pups to feed that she becomes stressed and goes after bigger and easier prey because her male counterpart has been killed and she needs to feed her pups.
About 15 seconds.
Okay. Now listen up. Wouldn't we do the same thing if our main provider was killed, or murdered, I should say? Wouldn't we do anything to protect our families, to make sure they're fed? But, you know, that's up to you guys.
Mr. Abel, your time's up. If you could wrap it up. If you want to turn in your written testimony so that we have it for the record, what you haven't finished, that would be great.
Okay, I'll just say something really fast. What I'd like to see added to this draft policy is a permit requirement. First and foremost, I am against killing contests. This permit process, this would require background checks, a fee structure, NDOW law enforcement, and public notification. So that way an NDOW can know when and where an event is taking place and for how long. And I just want to say that this draft policy is a great first step, but it needs a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abel. Next public comment, please.
Yes, Bobby McCollum. A short comment. There's no mention of the gambling that goes on in this policy. It needs to be addressed. By you not addressing it, you're giving your stamp of approval for it. And I would hope that you would include some language regarding your wish that the gambling be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCollum. Any further public comment in Reno? Paul.
For the record, Paul Dixon, Clark County. We had a fairly extensive, versus all the agenda items that you had for this commission meeting, this was the longest discussed agenda item. It embodies a lot of passion from people. And the Clark County CAB, after listening to public input they received from their constituents, as well as discussions we had, felt that the policy as written is a policy that really deals more with hunter ethics and is not something that you would try to enforce at this point. And you heard from Project Coyote and others, if you want to make an enforceable policy, you're going to have to put a lot more teeth in something and take away vagaries. And for that reason, the Clark CAB felt that this was more of an ethics policy, and they felt that it was basically something that was not enforceable. So at this point in time, we did not take any action on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dixon. Further public comment?
Good morning. My name is Grace Patorti. I'm speaking on my behalf of myself, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to address this issue with you this morning. I live less than a mile away from the coyote contest in Lemon Valley. I went to the bar the night before the coyote contest. I sat outside the bar the night of the coyote contest. And I want to say to you, in fact, I want to challenge each of you. If you want to make an educated decision on coyote contests, attend one of them. Go to one of them. See the bloodlust, the cheering, the crowd emptying the bar and toasting to the biggest coyote being thrown from the Jeep. I have photographed this. It is nightmarish. It is nightmarish what you will see at one of these coyote killing contests. And I just really want you to go to one. Go and see what happens. We witnessed, I mean, they're making a market for killing coyotes, selling T-shirts, it costs you $50 to join. They've got cup holders, they've got guns, they've got all kinds of stuff as prizes. They're making a market. He's selling wristbands for all-you-can-eat buffets. This is a profit-making enterprise for the Wayside Bar in Lemon Valley. That's what it is. And they're killing indiscriminately for profit. That's all I can say. I witnessed it. And the other thing I want to say is, this is good. We're moving forward. But I want to say that these coyote killing contests, your proposed policy, this contest in Lemon Valley violated everything that you say is not acceptable. It violated everything. And that's all I want to say. I went there, I witnessed it, I have nightmares. And I really do challenge you to go to one of these and see how it works and how the animals are just, it is so disrespectful. I just cannot say enough to see these coyotes just dumped on the ground like a piece of trash.
Thank you. It's public comment.
Rex Flowers speaking on behalf of myself. I believe that this policy as written identifies and meets all of the concerns that were aired through the committee. I think we spent a lot of time trying to get it right. It should be passed as written. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Joel.
For the record, Joe Blakesley, I'm speaking for myself. Don't expect me to say anything about wildlife management or science today, because I want to relay a conversation that I had with Commissioner McNinch after the last policy meeting that we had here. Joe Belding asked him about where the wildlife watchers and whatnot were coming from. And he told us a story about a rare bird that was sighted in San Francisco. He said it was a great thing. He said people came from all over to see this bird. He made new friends, socialized, great experience. I said, you know what that reminds me of, Dave? That reminds me of a coyote calling contest. I've attended 2 of them. Both of them were in Elko. We had a real nice banquet at the Red Lion, 80 people. People came from all over. Dinner together. I made new friends. I saw old friends. Social event. We spanned out and went hunting the next day. Went to Montana, guys went to Wyoming, guys went to California. And we came back. A bunch of like-minded people socializing in the manner that they chose to socialize. Legal. I would like to suggest that what we're talking about today is cultural bigotry. You look that definition up on your iPads or your cell phones, I think you'll find that we have people that are totally against what another group or a culture wants to do. I think that word is ugly, but I think it's entirely appropriate. As someone that's constantly exposed to this and has been for years, I'll quote something that's been going on around on the TV for quite a while. I recognize it when I see it. As far as this policy goes, what does it actually say? Full of platitudes and innuendos. There are underlying implications here. I would just assume that you came out and said it. I intend to take whatever photos I want to take. I'm not going to eat any coyotes. As far as some of the comments here, maybe we need to redefine what sportsman is. The root word is sport. Not an ugly word. Start going down that path, and that's where we're going. I'd like to ask you to just drop kick this thing out of here. You guys said that it was okay to have contests. I don't think we need to go into social engineering. Social people in this world are not the ones you need to worry about. It's the anti. Thank you.
Next public comment, please.
Thanks for this time. My name is Michonne Eben. I'm a resident, and also my ancestors have been here for thousands of years. As you heard my young colleague earlier talk about the creation stories, science has made our culture into something of myths and legends and romanticized, and that's not true. These creation stories are oral histories. They're real and they're true to us. We all have oral histories. We all have stories and creation stories. The one thing, a couple things I want to talk about is, you know, America, our pastime has become killing. We have killing all over America, all over the world right now. And so when you're out just, you know, sportsmanship, killing, and trying to prove something that is something more expendable or something more that's different than what our society really is, then that is not a right thing. And so when we're out killing just for the heck of it or just for sportsmanship, it seems to be a wrong thing, because then it looks like we're doing that all over America. This draft policy, it's a great first step, but needs a lot of work. For instance, in the purpose section, the Commission recognizes that contest organizers and contestants are responsible for exercising good judgment and respect for all wildlife. Exercising good judgment and respect for all wildlife needs to be defined, because good and respect is very different for respectful and disrespectful people. My good judgment is different from a hunter's judgment who is going to be out there killing for amusement. That's all different. In many Native American hunting traditions, when we kill our prey, there is a respectful technique. We do not kill just to kill. We have a purpose. There's a prayer, there's honor, and there's gratitude for taking of a life to the need for our families, today and yesterday as well. We also utilize the dead animal parts, such as the skin, in our traditional moccasins, dress, and glove makings. We still utilize these techniques today. Further, the draft policy states that the commissioners will support ethical outdoor traditions and respect for the wildlife pursuit. Again, these words need to be defined, because commissioners, your ethics, audience, your ethics, wildlife hunters who are out there for sports, their ethics are all different. Our ethics are different. We need to define these terms. I just want to say thank you for this time. Thank you for allowing us to speak. It's a good start, but we need to continue on. You are the Nevada Department of Wildlife. You have a responsibility not only for the people, but for the animals that live here. And remember that the coyote was placed here first before. They've never attacked anybody. They have never attacked in something that has been wrongful in their eyes, and they are a spiritual being just like you and I that we're all sitting here. Thank you for this time.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne Newfer, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. So as a proud rural Nevadan, I learned at a young age from my grandfather Native American beliefs in growing up on a ranch that respect for other beings is crucial for humanity. Acts like coyote killing contests are a clear example of the utmost disregard for another life. It's hard to blame others who are not given the chance to learn respect from the land. I have 3 older brothers who were taught through generations how to hunt like men. And when I say hunt like men, I mean it was instilled in them to have the courtesy to the animal who had just given their life to feed my family. I would like to think that man didn't need another law to enforce something that should be already in your blood. You think that we could have the understanding within ourselves that many do not have that elder or that leader to teach them. So I hope today the commissioners understand the importance of today's decision. This isn't just another policy, it's an act of respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment in Reno? If there's anybody else, let's line up behind and we'll
Hello, my name is Jana Hoffeditz. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. I am a volunteer with the Humane Society of the United States, so I am asking for the 6 minutes, if I could. Okay? All right. I'm a volunteer with the Humane Society of the United States, and I provide the following comments on the proposed policy on coyote killing contests and the take of wildlife on behalf of the Humane Society of the United States and our Nevada supporters. The Commission's policy, as written, is vague and offers limited oversight. It does not go far enough to regulate contests, still allowing participants to treat the killing of wildlife as a game. These events flout sportsmanship, ethics, and outdoor traditions, as it is impossible to show respect for an animal that is pursued in a competitive atmosphere complete with cash and prizes. Wildlife killing contests are unsporting and cruel. Hunting involves fair chase and respect for animals in their habitats. Wildlife killing contests do the opposite. Sponsors reward contestants for killing the most and the largest. Most hunters would agree that shooting live animals for fun prizes or target practice is unacceptable. Public acceptance for coyotes and other large carnivores is increasing. Animals that were once stigmatized, such as bats, sharks, and coyotes, are now appreciated as a critical component to a functioning ecosystem, who are deserving of compassion and conservation, as opposed to a previous ethos of domination and mastery over wild animals. This should be translated into rethinking organized killing contests of all wild animals. The Commission itself even recognizes that killing contests are not effective method for managing wildlife. In fact, culling coyotes and other wildlife under a misguided belief system that reducing predators will protect ungulate herds like deer, elk, or other livestock safer is not supported by the best available science. Almost done here. Specifically, persecution of coyotes disrupts their social structure, which ironically encourages more breeding and migration in the end, resulting in more coyotes. Furthermore, the indiscriminate killing of predators fails to target problem animals and can actually lead to an increase in conflicts with livestock. Wildlife killing contests are scientifically unjustifiable, unsporting, and contrary to how Nevadans believe wild animals should be treated. We are in agreement with Project Coyote's synopsis regarding the Commission's policy and strongly urge the Commission to ban these events in Nevada. Okay, my name is Jana, and I want to tell you what I had to do during the coyote killing contest that happened in my backyard. I live in Palomino Valley. This happened in Lemon Valley. I found out by contacting the BLM that they had no way of policing the BLM land during this contest, which we found out that the contest, they did not get the proper permit. They broke that law and told their participants they could hunt anywhere. And so when we're establishing these rules that even on your own letter says they shouldn't be breaking laws, they broke that law. I went out there. I had to get a little safety light at, for the top of my truck, and I went out there to watch what was happening on BLM. We had motocrossers out there, families on ATV vehicles, and we had hunters that day. I came into contact with two of them, and I just very politely said, this is not legal what you're doing, being on BLM land. The owner of Wayside said, go anywhere, but on his paperwork he said, only on private land. It was a deceiving, bad deal there. So I want to make it clear that I had to go out there as a citizen to protect my own public land. And I do think that we need to figure that stuff out too, that we need to watch what's going on our public lands. These people that I told what was happening were shocked. So that was an issue. And another big thing I want to bring up is that if you kill an animal, it should be eaten. That's just, if you kill something, eat it. To me, that is a basic rule, and that's why other competitions that might come up, whether it's fishing or whatever, they're either put back in the water or whatever, or they're eaten. And that's why this is such a unique deal. So please take in consideration what I said, and I do appreciate everything. I guess I've said enough of this stuff, so thank you very much, you guys, and I really hope you make the wise decision. Thanks very much.
Any further public comment? Motion for discussion